Hello, everybody. My name is Vito Quaglia, and this is A Matter of Principle. Today's guest is someone I've known for quite a while, the head soccer coach at Lake Lehman High School, Rick Bartolini, or Enrico Bartolini, or Ricky Bartolini, however you know him. I've known him in all those phases. I've known him as a student when I knew him as Ricky, and then saw him as a young man being a substitute teacher, a coach, whatnot, and then he evolved into the young adult that he is today. But he is someone who has his foot in several worlds, whether it's sports, education, and or business. He's kind of done it all and is still kind of doing some of all of it. And I think he really brings a fresh and new perspective to this show. So it's a great day for the podcast to have somebody with his varied interests on. So before I bore anyone else, I'm going to have Coach Bartolini tell us a little bit about himself, and he can go right from his playing days into when he started to get into coaching and even some strength training, sports training kind of stuff he did as well. So, Coach, welcome to the podcast, and why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Like you said, yeah, I've done a little bit of everything. As far as, the sports world goes, I've played soccer my entire life since I was about 4 years old. And then when I graduated college, I moved out to New York for a little bit. And then when I came back, I wanted to get into coaching, and just how it happened to go about, I was going to go for one of the jobs at Wyoming area, our alma mater, and didn't work out the timing of that. And I was with the head soccer coach at Dallas at one point, and I was telling him the story that, I was looking to get back into it, and he happened to need a junior high coach. And so I started there and coached junior high for 3 years. And then when they brought the girls over to the fall, he and the other coach who was with him for a long time split. He took the boys, the other coach took the girls. I came up to help him with the boys, and my assistant came up to help the other coach with the girls. And yeah, I was at Dallas for about 12 years, and now I just finished up my third season at Lake Lehman, which, it's nice. You don't realize it in real time. I very much enjoyed my time at Dallas, the players that I coached, the parents that I became close with. But when I went over to Lehman, it was kind of like a reset and a little jolt to my system. New players, new program, new people around you, kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit. On top of that, I subbed at Wyoming area and Dallas for about 3 or 4 years, starting in, call it 2017. Enjoyed that. Didn't really know what I was getting into, but I enjoyed the role that I had there, being able to connect with the kids and kind of being, a set of ears for some kids who didn't really have that. And, that was, pretty cool. And then, outside of that, I had a soccer club, and I also have my CSO. I do some strength training from time to time. But in June of 2021, my dad and I decided to, kind of go full bore back into the furniture that we design and manufacture. And so I had to give up a few of the other things. I still coach high school soccer, but, can't sub anymore. And the club had to, kind of take a back seat. But, doing this and building this from essentially the ground up or back from the ground up, because my father had a very prominent furniture business back in the 70s and 80s. He was number one in the country in ready to assemble furniture. This is different than that. So, we could sort of piggyback off of it, but we also could kind of have to pave our own way with this as well. But yeah, it's been an exciting journey. It's full of, frustrations, and sometimes you want to pull your hair out, but there's a lot of good stuff that has come along with it as well. And, that's basically what takes up the majority of my days now.
Now, with what you're doing on the furniture side, you said, you design, and it's basically, somebody comes to you with an idea and you guys build whatever that is from just the piece of paper, like a drawing on a piece of paper, or somebody says, I have an office space where I need this, or someone says, in my home, I want this kind of, table or chair, whatever it is, or anything under the sun that you guys build. How long when you're doing that, is that something where you knew, growing up, you knew your dad did that kind of stuff? Was that something you wanted to do? Like you mentioned, briefly, you kind of sports and even the substitute stuff. And so that's kind of one world, school and scholastic things. The manufacturing, designing of furniture is something that would be foreign to most people, except if you grew up in a family where your dad did it. Was that something when you were going through school and you were playing soccer as a student that you wanted to, kind of do what your dad did, or did that come about, in the like you said, 2021 and whatnot? Was that something that came about later in your life?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is no. There weren't really any, specific plans to go this route. I mean, after I graduated from Wyoming area, I went to Syracuse, graduated with a degree in biophysics. Was thinking about I could potentially go work in a lab, do some research, maybe do some pharmaceutical or med sales device sales, something along those lines. As I got later and later into college, I pretty much knew that I wanted to work for myself. I wanted that autonomy. I knew that it was going to be something something business related. And we've had a few different ventures like since I've graduated from college, but this just kind of came about because we saw a need. You could go to big box stores and people could walk in and they see a couple things and, do you want the brown or the black one? And, then in a few years, you got to go get something else. We started seeing a lot of my dad's original designs from back in the 70s and 80s that he used to make, hundreds of a month and thousands of a year, start selling on these high-end antique furniture websites for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, using his name, using our name really. And we saw that people wanted to get back to, quality furniture, custom designs. And so we decided to come up with the kind of business plan that we have where we're making the customer part of it. So it's twofold. People could come into the showroom, they could see a design that we already did that they like, and they could pull it off the floor and take it home. Or they could come in and say, I need a table this size by this size, and I want to use this die on it, and I want to use, these type of legs. Or, I really like that lounge chair that you have over there, but can we do this fabric with, this color on the arms? And then we make the customer a part of the process. They now are helping to create the design that we are ultimately manufacturing for them. And it tells a story, not only for us, but for them. And, then they have a little bit more pride in it as well, because people come over and, they're kind of oohing and ahhing at it. And they're like, oh yeah, like I helped design it. And their friends are like, well, what do you mean? And, they tell them the story and they're like, man, like, that's pretty cool. So did I ever think that this was, going to be where I ended up? Not really. With that being said, I'm 7-8 years old. I'm in the wood shop, and the employees go on lunch, and I'm over on the bandsaw cutting pieces of wood for different pieces that we're making, whether it's a cabinet or whatever else. And then the guys are coming back from lunch and my dad's busting them. Like, why am I paying you when my 8-year-old son does this better than you? So, to your point, it's always kind of been in me because I've been around it. I was taught from an early age, but I never really thought that I was going to turn this into, the business that we've turned it into until, just like anything else, we started seeing the need and we decided to come up with some solutions for those needs.
And it's really like your description of the evolution of how you became involved, and also, it kind of was your focus. I mean, you spent a lifetime really in sports, whether it was the playing part of it or the coaching part of it. I mean, you spent over a dozen years, 15 years, 20 years, involved in both of those things. And then you also, whether you said the 7, 8-year-old you really spent that or more, in and around what your dad was doing. So, I mean, it begs to ask, are there correlations? Are there connections between, athletics and running a business? I mean, so you played and you coached for a long time at various levels, whether it's, youth and high school and college. And then, now you're involved in something. It's, you saw your dad kind of doing more of quantity production, but now you guys are doing a lot of, one-ofs and a lot of really high end stuff. So is there a connection, or what is the connection that you see between athletics, whether it's the playing of, the competition level of, or the coaching of, and running that kind of business?
Well, I mean, the correlation in my mind is kind of simple, in the sense that just like anything, practice makes progress. So, I use the story of cutting the pieces out on the bandsaw. The first time that I got on the bandsaw, was I able to, cut straight and perfect and whatever else? Absolutely not. But as you do it more and more and more, you become better and better at it. In sports, I'm taking a bag of balls down to the fields in 44 by the dike, and, shooting 100 balls at the goal by myself, just like, teaching myself different things and practicing, like noticing when I shank a ball, okay, I did this, and then I fix that. And when I do something right, trying to remember, and the muscle memory that goes along with that. And, that's one of the things that allowed me to lead the conference in scoring my senior year. But, I put a lot of work into that. And, from the business side of it, I mean, business is all competition. We're not the only people who do this. And, you gotta be the best, or at very least do something different from what other people might be doing, in order to, win the customers, win the clientele. So with any of it, for me to, kind of wrap my head around, just because, you knew me in school. I always had, good grades and whatever else, but, at the same time, it's school. There's somebody, for the most part, telling you what to do and whatever else. But when you have to go out and you have to figure it out on your own, and you're not the best immediately at the thing trying to do, at least for somebody like me, that stuff's frustrating. So you got to continue to work at it and just get a little bit better each time. And then eventually the snowball gets so big that you're like, oh, okay, I could do this stuff in my sleep now. And I honestly think that it's like, that's with anything. It's with coaching, it's with teaching, it's with running a business, it's with, working with your hands, it's with writing computer code, whatever it is.
Now, one thing that when I did see, some of the pieces that you and your dad have created, it made me think, because there's some blurbs, in and around that stuff where you can see, the story behind some of the things, and there's some pictures. And, I was looking on website and whatnot. So how much, when you guys sit down and talk with folks and try to get an idea, meeting them where they are, what their needs are, how long does it go from, if somebody wanted a completely unique piece, how long from the design of it, or the discussion of what their need is, until the finished product? What is it, like a few weeks, a few months? How does that work?
Everything is individual, because we'll deal with some people who are very decisive, and we'll get, all of the answers relatively quickly. And then, if we have the supplies in house, we could get to work on it immediately, or I always put it in the queue immediately. If we have to, say it's a table and they need it this size by this size, and we don't happen to have something like that in stock, then we got to go to, our suppliers and find that specific piece, which may take a little bit longer. And then you have the other side of the coin where, we have some people that we work with who will, be like, okay, yeah, I want this thing. And then we won't hear from them from a couple weeks. And then, oh, hey, yeah, so I've been thinking about this, and we'll get another answer. And then, it'll be a few days before we hear from them again. And then, so like, I'm never I'm not a pushy salesman. I'm not a high pressure salesman. I am somebody who educates and informs. Here are the options. Here's what we're able to do. Here's what we think will look great, so on and so forth. But, I allow the customer to get there in their own timing. Now, with that being said, if we're, X amount along in the process and we got to get the thing finished because it's like sitting around and we don't want to get it beat up or whatever else, then I'll be a little bit more on top of them. Like, hey, we got to figure this out. We got to do this. We got to do that. But, I don't ever sit there and force people into having to do this or having to do that. So to your point, I mean, we've worked on projects that have been done in, 2 or 3 weeks. We've worked on projects that have taken, 6 to 8 months. Like right now we're doing, there's a new restaurant going in Scranton and we were commissioned to do all custom banquettes for the restaurant. And between like meeting them and then the design and then, continuing to figure out the design and then the manufacturing and so on and so forth, it's been probably 4 or 5 months already.
And have you ever, the clients that you have, the folks that buy stuff from you guys, is it mainly, Northeastern PA? Is it Pennsylvania? Is it the Eastern Seaboard? Is it national, international? Like where do the people come from who buy your stuff?
Nationally. Obviously, conquer local. So there's a fair amount of people in NEPA who have bought our products and we've done work for, but we've had people walk into our showroom from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Carolinas, Florida, Park City, Utah, Texas. And, we've made products for them as well. On top of, people calling in or like, seeing stuff on our website and then, like sending us an email or calling in, hey, I like this, but can we do that? Or so on and so forth. So yeah, we've definitely sent our pieces all across the country, but the higher concentration would probably be local just because they have more access to us.
What would you say is, in your, again, this is, really unique and individual to you because you're the one that is a coach and is, a furniture business owner and, manufacturer and creator. So is there something in the way you communicate with your players and or with prospective customers that you see, maybe some of the same technique or the same things that you look for? Like if you're trying to get a player to buy into, a strategy or a concept or a skill or a technique that you're trying to get them to do, and or you're trying to speak to a customer about selling something, like bringing that sale home. Do you see any similarities in how you communicate, or are they two different worlds for you?
No, again, it's essentially the same. It's just understanding people. So think about you with all of your years in education. There are some students that you could sit there and you could lay into and they're going to get the point and make the adjustments. And there's some that you sit there and you have to, kind of coddle and speak in a certain way to, and that's how they make the change or the adjustment. And it's the same thing with sports. Like there are some kids that I could sit there and be like, dude, like you're really playing awful right now. And then they get pissed off and then they go out and they play better. And there's certain players in my career that like you do that too and they shut down. So you got to take a different approach and in order to get the same result out of them. So, with customers, like I said, there's some customers we can come in and we can have a 45-second conversation and it's very direct, very business, boom, 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 boom. And we have everything that we need. And then there's other customers that come in and, you kind of have to guide them a little bit more along the way and, help them come to the decisions that, they were going to come to anyway, but just in a more expeditious fashion. So, people are people, and no two people are the same. So you can't, really talk to any two people the same way. There's always going to be like a little bit of a difference in how you approach them.
And you're describing what a lot of folks on the podcast have said, is really that, communication starts with the listening part. So you really, and knowing, like you said, you have to know your players. In my world, you have to know the students, and every student's different, every player's different, every customer's different. And I think the unsuccessful, among any career path are the ones that maybe have a great idea and they want to, shoehorn it into whatever, player or group of players or business, whatever product they're doing, whatever business plan they have. And they're more concerned with, telling people what they think is right rather than listening to where those people are coming from. So now you exactly, said the same kind of stuff that I've heard from a ton of successful people on this show. That being said, yeah, go ahead.
Well, and that's the thing. Being rigid is it very rarely leads to success. So, for instance, in 2016, we won the district title at Dallas. We lost three seniors that started or contributed in a meaningful manner. So we essentially had, call it, 9 starters coming back the following year. For whatever reason, we were not able to run the same formation with the same success the following year from the year before. And we had basically 9 out of 11 starters back on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So, figure that one out. But if we were rigid and we said, no, like, this is a formation that we're going to run, this is the system we're going to play in, and you guys have to fit into it, we wouldn't have been successful the following year. But, sometimes you just got to, and for no reason whatsoever, but sometimes you just have to make the adjustments.
And it's weird because so many of those things, whether it's business or sports, I mean, there's always forecasting, right? There's always, you're reading the metrics and the stats, and this should work on paper. This should work. And then for whatever reason, whether it's the climate of what's going on, the culture of how the kids or the people are feeling at the moment, or, what they want to spend money on in the business world, or, how your student athletes are feeling that day, or the chemistry of the people involved. Same thing, in a workforce. If the folks who are kind of doing the stuff behind the scenes, if there's not a chemistry there, you don't get the same kind of results. If the players that you're trying to coach and motivate, if they're not gelling together, doesn't matter how brilliant you are as a coach, it's not going to work. So that's something that folks on the show say as well, that there's art and science involved this stuff. I mean, there's definitely the specifics and the facts and everything that should work on paper, but then there's the nuance of the art to it, where you have to kind of just go, there's a feel to it, right? And the good ones, the great ones who are successful at things know when to kind of embrace that feel and kind of, because emotion has a lot to do with everything. Emotion has a lot to do with the momentum in sports. Emotion has a lot to do with the kind of things that people spend their money on, right? So you have to be able to have that balance in both of those worlds. So the question I have for you on the coaching side of it, and it doesn't matter what level it was at, what would you say was the best thing involved in your coaching aspect, put your coach hat on? What was the best thing that you were involved with as a coach? And you don't have to be, a Lake Lehman head coach guy. Maybe you were in a system with somebody else, but whether it was the most successful situation, the biggest turnaround, the most fun you had, what was the best time you had as a coach?
Honestly, for me, the best time that I've had coaching I'm not going to say it doesn't have to do with coaching, but it doesn't really have to do with coaching. So you look at it now, where, again, I've been coaching for, 15, 16 years. I see my players, and even from teaching, my students, out on the street from time to time, and they are still excited to see me and talk to me. And, they go to college and they're calling me because, they're asking about this scenario or that scenario, whether it has to do with sports or school or life or whatever. And getting into coaching, like, I just got into coaching just because I love playing soccer, and, like, I still wanted to be around the game. And I never thought that it was going to be so much more than that, where like, I was going to have the ability to have, the impact that I've had on some of these players and students. And like that to me is the coolest thing. I would say that outside of, winning games, winning championships, whatever, I would say that is the true mark of success of a coach. Like if your players still want to be around you, talk to you, seek out advice from you, like well after they're done playing, I think you did something right.
Yeah, and ding, 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 ding. So Coach Bartolini from Lake Lehman had said the magic word without even saying it, is that relationships. Relationships are at the heart of everything. And when you have success relationships, you usually have success. And that was one of the things that, we've said since the beginning and that's the reason, that I call this a matter of principle. I mean, I'm a principal. I get it. Haha. But it's a matter of principle that you have to invest in relationships. And it could be a human relationship, a coach and his players. It could be a relationship between yourself and your mindfulness, yourself and the way you work out, your nutritional needs, a human relationship between you and your life partner, whatever it is. But when there's investment there, then you get that, what you're talking about. Like years later down the road, it's still a positive thing. People search you out. People ask you for advice because you built that relationship. And it wasn't transactional. It wasn't, hey, I'm here, I want you to do this for me. And if you do, I'll do that for you. And it's kind of like those, when you do it that way, they're temporary and they go by the wayside. It might be successful in a season or a year or something like that, but they don't stay, and when you talk about how, what you do, the impact, you said the word impact, you didn't realize the kind of impact you have. You got into coaching because you like the sport. And then all of a sudden you realize, holy cow, if you do this the right way, it pays dividends down the road. And I think that's one of the things that, again, transcends business and sports is, it's an investment. It takes some time. It doesn't happen quickly, but when you have the right ingredients, you're going to have that success. And one of the things that people talk about a lot on the show is, whether it's like some coaches, some business leaders talk about the family kind of thing where they approach their group as a family and there's a head of the family and whatnot. And in sports, the coaches on here have talked about, the bond that's built through adversity. And I think both of those things, whether it's, when you have a progress of training for something and there's ups and downs and wins and losses through a season, or if you're in a family situation, there's highs and lows, things happen and there has to be tough love and all that kind of stuff, yada, yada. But in both of those things, both those metaphors, there's a journey and the journey is usually more fun than the end result, even if it's a championship, right? So you to say, again, you've only been coaching, you have been coaching for a while, but it's not like you've been coaching for 35 years and you get it already. And that's what I always love to hear when I hear like young coaches talk about that and the importance of the understanding the impact you have as a coach and appreciating the journey. So you're saying the magic words, my friend. I'm glad. I didn't know if you were going to come on and start saying that. I didn't give you a script to talk about, but you're saying all the things that we mentioned on the show.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's just the thing. And it's true. And it's not just in coaching, business or life. Again, it's about relationships. Like, again, you could have the best product in the world. If I'm an awful person and I talk down to you and I make you feel terrible about yourself, you're probably not buying anything from me. If I'm a friend and I treat you in a certain way that's, not all that pleasant, you probably aren't calling me on the weekends and don't want to hang out with me. So it's just about being a good human being, and taking a little bit of extra effort to kind of realize what the person in front of you is trying to say and what they might need. And if you're able to, be a part of that and help in that manner, then that's awesome. And they remember you for it.
Now, when you have a business like you guys have, it's kind of a risk, it's not real There's not a safety where you're part of some big corporation, and regardless of, what happens on a daily basis, you're still going to get paid. I mean, you guys really have to depend on making sure that you put out really quality, material or quality products, and, word of mouth, like customers that buy your stuff, and, that gets out, like, hey, it's a conversation piece. Where did you get that? Well, I got it from, Enrico Bartolini. They're the high quality. And like you said, that stuff that must have been, being resold for thousands and thousands of dollars that your dad had seen, so that tells you that people are coming to you not just for, a need, but also like an investment. Like, cause honestly, these days you buy stuff and you reference big box stores and whatnot. There's not a lot of furniture that you buy from those kind of places that you're going to resell down the road, for a profit, right? If you're going to resell it, it's probably going to be for 10% of what you bought it for. And you're probably going to end up selling it to a college kid for their dorm room or something like that. So it must be really cool to know that you guys are turning out that kind of quality stuff, but it has to be like you're out there on a branch, right? Like that has to be scary, because if something changes for whatever reason, people don't knock on your door to buy this, high quality furniture, there's not an income coming in. So do you feel like there's pressure, a lot of pressure in what you guys do, or are you very confident in what you turn out and you're not too worried about it?
I mean, there's risk and reward in anything. I've had people very close to me, family and whatnot, who, well, why don't you do this instead? Or why don't you do that? And, it's just kind of their fears, because I could go work a corporate job and have been have worked a corporate job for the last 10, 15 years, and probably with the right company be somewhere mid six figures, and, get my PTO and all the benefits and whatever else. But I also know that for me specifically, I don't know that I would be necessarily happy doing that. And at the end of the day, we only go around once. And if I'm making all of this money and I'm miserable every day to wake up and go to work, or at very least not excited, then why do it? So yeah, just like you said, if we don't sell, we don't eat, we don't get paid. So there is that pressure where the whole thing could come crumbling down at any moment. But also at the same time, you could be at a job for 10 years and be a great asset to the company, or so you think. And then they could just walk into your office one day and say, okay, we don't need you anymore. And then what? Now we have to go and you have to figure it all out again anyway. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely pressure, but it's pressure that I'm willing to take on because I am allowed to live the life that I currently want to live. And, will that change down the road if I decide to get married, have kids, do that whole deal? Maybe. Or maybe it won't. Maybe I'll just continue to do these things that I'm doing because I will, by that point, have put myself in an even better position with even more securities and, just continue to live and then add those other great things to my life. I mean, it really is a day by day type deal. Somebody told me once, you could think 3 days ahead, but don't go further than that. And I think for most things, that's, a pretty decent mantra to live by, because if you go way further and you put these arbitrary timelines on these things, that's where anxiety comes in, and if you're thinking back on all the what ifs, that's where depression comes in. So why not just be okay with what you have and where you are now? And if there's something that you truly are, displeased with, then work towards making that adjustment. And with this, right now, yeah, there are days where I'm like, oh man, I just kind of want to hang it up. But you're going to have that day. And I had that day when I was substitute teaching, I didn't technically have to even get anything out of the kids. I just had to make sure that they were all alive at the end of the day. And there were some days that it was very trying, but you're gonna have those. I think that it's all about a trade-off. It's all about what are you willing to risk, and what pressure are you willing to, put on yourself, and how you handle it and how you adjust to it.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the balance that we mentioned before. You're also an example of really the norm of the folks I talk to on this show, and just about everybody who's been a guest on the Matter of Principle, it has been someone who is at a place in their career or in their life that wasn't what they were starting out to be. I mean, you mentioned college and looking in towards this scientific world and things like that. And then, you wind up with really being, somebody who's been a coach for a long time and in the world of business and creative as well. And so it's, and as an educator, a lifelong educator, and someone who every day goes to work and tries to do what we can to help kids make good decisions and help them be ready for the post high school world. It's hysterical to me, because really all the stuff that we think we're going to do when we're 16, 17, 18, or even when you start off in college or right after high school, it rarely ends up being what you do, right? So it's kind of like, again, it's that journey. There's things that happen along the way. There's a turn here, a turn there, or something happens in life, and the next thing you know, you're working a completely different job than you thought you were going to. And I think a lot of it, like you said, being happy in what you're doing. Like if you could make $1 billion, but if you're miserable every day, what's the point? And I think when you marry that idea of your passion plus a paycheck, that's what it's all about. And not everybody gets to do that. I mean, a lot of people struggle a long time before they can put those two things together. But it seems like for right now, for you're kind of in that world where and that's my question now is coaching in soccer, is that like, I don't know, is that a break from the maybe the pressure of the business, or is that something that works hand in hand? Does one help you and the other one stresses you out? How does that work with the two?
Well, so I mean, again, to your point, you remember my senior class, and how many people were coming out of my class going to these engineering schools, myself included, for some type of engineering degree, and not one of us graduated with an engineering degree.
Mm-hmm.
And how at 18 are we supposed to know that? It's tough, but again, it's just about making the adjustments. As far as soccer goes, I mean, I like the coaching scenario that I'm in now, because we start up in the summer sometime, getting some touches on the ball, getting our fitness back a little bit. And then we go into the season, then we have the season, then we have playoffs, and then, we're done around the end of October, beginning of November. And then you get a little bit of a break, you get a chance to miss it. When we brought our premier soccer club back online in 2017, it ended up being a lot, because at the time I was coaching high school soccer. I was coaching soccer at Penn State. I was coaching club soccer. And especially with the club soccer going year round, it was just a rigorous, monotonous job, especially because players, athletes play multiple sports and so on and so forth. So there would be times that I'd be going up in the middle of winter at 8:30 for an hour and a half practice, with 6 kids showing up. And what are you going to do with 6 kids? Especially at the high school level, like, it's tough. And it wore me out. And it was one of the reasons that I was like, I'm going to step back from it, and I'm just going to do the high school thing, because, it's more fun for me, and it's definitely an escape. But with that being said, I mean, I hold myself to, an almost impossibly high standard. So towards the end of our season, we were squeaking by some games, but like we weren't playing and winning like I thought we should be. And, talking with other coaches in the league that I'm friends with, and they're like, yeah, but like you're winning the games. And I'm like, I'm like, yeah, but I'm telling you, like, come playoffs, like, it's not going to be good enough. And, like, I see this wrong and I see that wrong. And, sometimes people dismiss it and sometimes people are like, okay, yeah, no, I get it. And that ended up being the thing. We lost a heartbreaker in the semis. We didn't play well. And it was, some of the stuff that I was worried about. But, it's still, even though I hold myself and my team to, this very high standard, it's still very much enjoyable because, again, it has to be. If you're waking up and you have anxiety around doing the thing that, you're supposed to be doing, maybe it's time to go do something else. So it's nice to have multiple things going on for that reason, that it's not, at least for me, monotonous and just every single day is the same exact thing, because I don't think that I would, enjoy that too much at all.
No, and that's a great thing about, both education and coaching is, there's the beginning of the school year or the beginning of the season, then, you have the journey towards the end, and that's what is very rewarding, is seeing the progress, right? You get to see these people at whatever that baseline is, and then hopefully there's growth and success along the way. And then you get that, there's an assessment, right? Whether it's a test at the end of the unit, or whether it's a game or, a scrimmage, whatever it is, you can see how well, you guys are doing. And then you build from that. So it's not really, there's a lot of you people out there that do jobs that are kind of the same all the time. And there's not those peaks and valleys. And some people, that's okay for them, that they like that. They like the kind of, stability. But for those people involved, in the sporting world, I think the progress, the journey, that's fun. And I think there's a lot of, there's a reason why certain people gravitate towards that kind of thing. And then I think the cool thing about what you've been talking about this whole time is, whether it's customers or players, you understand the importance of the relationship, of listening, of meeting people where they're at, of, understanding the motivation behind every individual isn't the same. Even though you have your own, as you say, high standard you hold yourself to, that you maybe can't hold everybody around you to that exact same standard. A version of it, yes, probably that fits that person, but not the exact way that, Ricky Bartolini, did things. And I just think it's cool to hear, people talk about that kind of stuff, because on the podcast, we pull people on, we say, hey, tell us a little bit about your life and see where it goes. And it's weird that so many things kind of mesh, right? And it might just be a little bit here or there, but, you really said a lot of things that equal success, to everybody that's been on the show. So as we wrap up, Coach, I want to ask you, a question about the future. Like you have a plan, you're doing some stuff, you're very successful, but you're an ambitious guy, you're a bright guy, and you're still on the beginning part of your journey. Where do you see yourself in 10 years, in 15 years? What's that version of Enrico Bartolini going to be?
Honestly, I'm at least partially a bag in the wind. And I say that because for a very long time, through high school, into college, out of college, I felt this need to control every single aspect about my life. And when something didn't go exactly the way I wanted it to or thought it should, or, I was disappointed about this thing or that thing, it really took a toll on me. And I had to learn how to, cope with a lot of these things that are outside of my control. And when I finally allowed myself to, kind of let go of a lot of these things, I became happier, and because I was less stressed, and not only did I become happier, more things started happening. So, again, we go back to the rigidity. I wasn't as rigid in, my thought processes and exactly how something had to go. And now, mind you, I'm still me. I'm still that stubborn Italian. So I still do that a fair amount. But when I decided to actually let a lot of that go, I was just able to, kind of maneuver in an easier manner with less friction. And then more and more things just started happening because I was open to more and more things. So, like I said, legitimately, this furniture thing, kind of came out of left field, and we decided to run with it. And I mean, it could go any which way. We could turn it into, another massive business with hundreds of employees and so on and so forth. We could get it to a certain point and, some company comes along and they want to buy us out, or the thing could, flop and we have to move on to the next thing. And all of those things are very real possibilities. The only thing that I could do now is do the best that I could and be confident in that I'm doing the best that I could. Put a couple of, guardrails up along the way so that, I might have something to kind of keep me on track or fall back on or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there might be something that comes along in 5 years of venture, and I'm like, yeah, that's very interesting. Let me hop into that. But those are things that I don't really know, because none of us do. And I'm always, open-minded towards whatever the next thing is, but I don't necessarily have this very, very specific timeline of I want to see this in this time, or else, because like I said, I used to do that and it didn't get me anywhere productive.
Well, I think you have a very wise outlook on life for a guy who really hasn't, lived 70 years yet. I mean, you're wise beyond your years, if I could say it that way. And I think you have a great outlook. I mean, you look for the adventure and the fun in things, but yet you still, have that kind of real, nose to the grindstone work ethic and high standard of excellence that helps you, turn out some quality things, whether it's in your coaching world or in the business world. And I think that's why right now you're in that kind of, Pax Romana, as the ancient Romans said, where you're in this, it's a peaceful time for you because things are kind of rolling in the right direction. So, as we wrap up, I want to wish success, an abundant amount of success, whether it's in the world of Enrico Bartolini Design or whether it's in the world of, coaching soccer at Lake Lehman or wherever your coaching career takes you. I think you're doing a great job. This has been fun for me to catch up with you because I really haven't had more than a couple minute conversation with you in years. So it's fun to hear all the things you've been doing. So I'll throw it out there and hopefully we could, reconnect down the road in a few months, maybe talk to you before you prepare for the next season coming up, catch up again. But I want to say thank you for giving us the time, for coming on, sharing your story and talking about some of the things that are important to you. So Coach, I thank you. With the holidays coming up, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving and happy Christmas, Merry Christmas and all of that. But thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate it. And I appreciate, what you're doing with the podcast and the guests that you've had on. And, it's all been great stuff. So, happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas to you and your family as well. And, keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. We will catch up with you. We will have you back on again. And folks, that has been another episode of A Matter of Principle. We've had Coach Bartolini, the soccer coach, a head soccer coach at Lake Lehman on. Also, he and his father have a tremendously cool furniture business. If you don't know about it, go online, Enrico Bartolini Design. Ricky, is there a website address that folks could look for that?
Yeah, it's EnricoBartolini.com, EnricoBartolini.com. And we're located in the 900 Rudder Ave building in 40 Fort, where Canning House and Sakari are.
Excellent. All right. Well, again, it's been another episode of A Matter of Principle. We hope that you enjoyed it and you stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you so much for listening.